Welcome back, guys. This is Mike, your one and only host. This land knows what I'm talking about. Today we're going to be having a look at the client. We're going to be making our UI, making it look extra nice, extra thick, and that's actually all we're going to be doing. We're going to be creating our login request as well, our login request message, and we'll send that over on clicks. But we won't be parsing it today. We're going to be parsing it in a different episode because we have to create the database before we do any of that. I just want to make sure we have our message in place and working. So what I'll be doing, and you are free to tag along with me, but I'll simply be opening this one on my other screen, and I'll be copying over this UI. Now, I actually want this to be in 16:9, so it's going to look something like that. Oops. Login, create account. There's going to be two messages, one at the top, one at the bottom for feedback, one for the welcome message. Once we connect, we might receive a message. This is for instances like in WoW. I use WoW for a lot of things, but when you connect to World of Warcraft, you connect to the master server, but you're not logged in yet. You're just connected to their server. And then they can give you information such as, hey, there's 5,000 people playing. Okay, maybe not 5 million people playing right now. Still not relevant. But they also tell you about stuff such as, hey, there's going to be a maintenance at 2 p.m. on this date. So you're already connected to the master server. They can send you information. You're still not connected to your own account, so you're not authenticated, but you're connected to them, and that's where the welcome message could come in handy. Authentication message, this is just going to be in terms of feedback. So if we input something that is wrong, incorrect password, incorrect anything. So I'm going to go ahead and get this UI started. So let's see. We're going to start by putting a canvas scaler in there. I'll make sure it is scale with screen size and put that in a 16:9 resolution. I'll be using 1920 by 1080. And I'll make sure to go under game as well. Put that in 16:9 so I can have a good look at what's going on. What I like to do is start over with a panel. That panel end up being an image with nothing on it. And the color would be full alpha black, just like this. That's basically my background. It's going to be very important to name this properly because I will be referencing to those objects in the canvas with their name. There's different way you could do it. There's more optimal way you could do it. You can simply have a reference in your script and drag and drop that from the inspector. Sometimes I like to do that. Sometimes I like to reference using names. Up to you in this case. But this is client-side optimization, and I don't really think about it so much. So I'm going to be using a panel for the welcome message. Anchor this at the top, and I'll be copying values over. This one is -50 in height, or at the top, 600 and 100 here. I also be putting my background color. I like this one quite a lot, so I'll be using 19, 1E, and 28 for the background. Here it is. Okay, this will be my welcome message, and here I'll be including TMP, so Text Mesh Pro. I like using it since it's part of the engine now. Really enjoy using it. You need to import the essential though, so that's what I'll do. And I will be renaming this for welcome message text, which we might be referencing per name, by name. Every time I have text, I like to make it stretch on both axes and then just put 0 everywhere. So it takes the whole thing, and I anchor it, or actually I center it using the paragraph alignment. Here it is. So that's my welcome message. I think the size is just fine. I'll be copying that over. This is going to be my authentication message. And beneath it is going to be the authentication message text. This one will be anchored at the bottom with 50 NY. There it is. So I got my two messages already on the screen. Now it's time for those panel. The first one will be a create account panel. So create account. And in terms of alignment, what am I using? I'm actually going straight from the center with a width of 600, 360 in height, position -370, and that's it right here. I will be using a different background color. I believe I'm using this one here. Now in my create account, I'm using a vertical layout group to have everything ordered from top to bottom. However, I'm not forcing expand on height, I'm forcing expand on width and also child control size and width. This way, they will go from the bottom, but they won't stretch up in height. Okay, so next up I have a header, which is going to be just a place where I input text. In this case, create account in all caps, because I'm a dangerous person. Anchor this in the middle, and the height of this one I believe was 100. Okay, nice, here we go. Anchor this in the center. I might want to make this a little bit bigger, why not? And I had a different color on this one. I liked the new color, so I was using a nice little cyan. There it is. That was my create account header, so I'll just call this one header. Beneath that, this is where I start using input field. So this is where we start inputting some information. Now it always spawns at a weird place simply because it doesn't know about the vertical layout group until you move it. So just click on the gizmo, it's going to move at the proper place, and you'll be good to go. Now for every one of these, I like to have a height of 70. The background color is quite different. I'm using this color for background, so 19:1. It's a little bit different, as you can see. Very, very small difference. And then of course the text inside of it has to be somewhat visible, so I'll take both placeholder and also the normal text, anchor that in the center, and make this a little bit bigger, so maybe 26 will do the job. For the placeholder, I'll make it a little bit lighter, and for the actual real text, I'll just make it full white. And it's gonna look something like that. Okay, so placeholder in that case is gonna be username here, triple dot, and I'm going to change the name of the Text Mesh Pro input. This is what I'll be referencing per name, so it's very important that I actually know what I write here, so I can remember, what to put in the code. Here is going to be create username. I'll duplicate that for create password in second spot, and then finally create email. Oops. Of course, I have to go back and actually change a couple of things in there, so I'll just be changing the placeholder. In this case, this is password, and this is email. Here we go. And we finally wrap this up with a nice little button, which is going to be our submit button. Again, move that, you'll be able to see it at the proper place. In terms of height, I believe this one is 50, so it takes the whole spot left. Do I have text in there? I do have text, however, this is the normal text. I don't like this one. You want to use TMP instead. So delete the normal text and put a Text Mesh Pro text in there. I'll be changing the background color to say that cyan over here. So it looks something like that. And then the text inside of it, first, this is the submit button. The text inside of it can be submit in all cap. And we end up with something like this. So I'm quite satisfied with that. I'm going to duplicate it, change the position from negative 370 to positive 370, and then we'll create our login account panel. So login account. Now in terms of the username password, we're only going to be using username and password. And in fact, I want to be using either the email or the password, because there's going to be two ways to log in. Either using your email or you're using your username and then discriminator. We'll get back to that in a moment, but just know that here is it's gonna be email or username at something something something, depending on what your discriminator is. Okay, that's all the information we need in here. Let's just make our nice box look nicer, maybe with 380 or 390 for the scale. So just match. And here it is. We got our very simple, very slick UI, and we'll be using that to make our requests. That's a common bug, by the way. If you don't see your things, don't worry about it. Okay, so we're almost done with the boring part. Before we head back into the code, I will create a symbolic link in between my shared folder on the client and also my shared folder on the server. Now, is this a good practice? I believe it is if you're working by yourself. However, if you're working with Git or with Collab, you might mess things up with it. It's actually going to give you a lot of trouble. Unless you're working by yourself. If you're using Git by yourself, you're using Collab on your own, you don't have any teammate, you're just using that to save or something like that, it won't give you any problem. As soon as you're having multiple people work on a project, if you're using symbolic link, you might have problems at one point. You're gonna have like git errors, conflicts, you're gonna have all that kind of stuff that isn't really fun to deal with. But if you're like me and you're on your own, I really recommend that you use a symbolic link in between shared folder 1 and shared folder 2, so they act at the same thing. They basically are the same folder. And if you're using multiple people to create your game, then you're gonna have to copy and paste stuff around and just make sure that they always match to some extent if you're using the shared method. Okay, enough talk about that. Let's actually go create a symlink. I believe if you're on the Windows, you're gonna have to open up the CMD as a administrator. So let's go ahead and open that up. Now the command I believe is make link. So mklink. You have to specify its directory. We're gonna be cloning a directory. So /D, capital D, and then I believe it is the location where you're sending it, and then the reference to the folder. So here's what we'll do. Okay. We'll make sure the client is the one that has the folder and the client is the one that copies it. So I will need a link. So I will do a right click, show in Explorer. I will take this link over here, this whole thing. So I'll take this, copy, I'll right click to paste. Oh, I don't have it in the right click. So if you can't paste, right click on the top bar. You should remove this quick edit and insert modes already. It's quite annoying. And then you can right click in the thing and do a paste. Okay, I don't have that for some reason. Let's go back and actually grab this shared folder. You have to grab it with the shared, by the way. So here it is. Copy, paste, and that's going to be my target, which means this one needs to be deleted. But before we do that, let's grab the one from this end. This is the one that gets cloned. So shared, copy this one over. There's really no big difference except the fact that this one is from the server and this one is from the client. If you have made the mistake of having a space in between the name of your tutorial, like if you don't have an underscore here and it's a space, that's going to mess up everything. So make sure you put it in quotation. So it's going to look something like that. Oops. Okay, I messed up everything now. I had a little bit of trouble, but if you made a mistake of having a space in between tutorial and client over here, I'm using a underscore, so I'm fine. But if you made the mistake of having a underscore, make sure you put your link in quotation. It's very important. So let me just paste that again. Try it for real this time. I'm sending this over from the client to the server. Well, first link is client and then it's the server. Always looking at the shared folder. Before this works, this is going to return me an error. It says that file already exists. So before this works, I have to go here on my client and delete my shared folder. Don't be afraid to delete it. It's going to cause a lot of crash. Totally normal. It's missing a couple of references now. And then go ahead and run your command. It's going to say symbolic link created for your client, and it's pointing to the shared folder on your server. If you go back in your client, you're going to see that the shared folder is back, but this time it has a symbolic link to it, which means if I go over here on the right hand side or on the left hand side, any sides, that's going to work, and I create a file, for example, a sprite asset or something like that. No, that didn't work. Okay, that's a stupid example. If I create a C# script, it's right here, and then if I click on my client, you're going to see it's going to appear as well. I'm on my client right now and I'm going to delete this one. Back on my server, it's also going to be deleted. So as you can see now, they share the same exact folder as a reference. And that's cool for us because we're going to be playing around with stuff in either side and we want to make sure it's always synchronized. Okay, so going on the shared folder right now, it's time to create a new message. This is the net login request. So we have the create account and also the login request. We could call it create account request, but why would we go and do that? Public const int login request, that's going to be equal to 2. And now we have a new net operation code just for this. I will go ahead and open up the create account and then the login request. I'll open up both of them so I can copy create account like I'm doing right now. and paste it in login request. Make sure you change the name of it, you change the constructor of it, and also you change the operation code of it. So when you try to log in, we only have two information: username or email and the password. So in this case, I am removing email. They're all the same thing now, so username or email. And then the server is going to decide whether it's email or username. We'll actually do that from there. And that's it. That's all I need for this message. We now have our two messages ready. We just now have to send them in the proper manner. So right now, we're already sending the create account message in a really weird way at the bottom of our script. This is now gone. We're not using this anymore. We are going instead, we're going to create two new functions in our send region. We'll say send create account. For this one, we'll take in a username, string password, and also another string for email. So we're going to choose what are the parameters we need in this case. And then we'll also have another function. We'll do both at the same time since we're here. Send login request. Take in username or email. We'll also take in a password. Here we go. Now, these two have to be called from somewhere. And that somewhere is going to be our buttons. What I tend to do when I have buttons specific to a scene is I like to create an object that's going to be taking care of the whole scene as an object, basically. So what I mean by this is I am going to create an object, create empty game object. I'll name it the exact same thing as the scene. So in this case, I believe it was client. That's a bad thing, but client scene. I should rename that for, say, lobby scene. And I will rename the scene for lobby as well. That lobby scene is going to contain an object called lobby scene. Okay. So this lobby scene will take care of reading the value from the input fields and then calling client and then do something with that. How are we going to have a reference to client? We are going to turn the client into a mono singleton. Not something that I am going to do here in this tutorial, but usually what I tend to do is I inherit from mono singleton, and just like this, I have an instance of my client as a singleton. However, you need to include the mono singleton script for that, which you can find online pretty much anywhere, really. It's been there for quite a while. However, I'd rather not do that here. I'm just telling you what practice I usually use. But instead, we're going to have a public static client instance that will define in the start, just like this. So instance is equal to this. And that will also work. Is it the best way to go about it? Well, maybe if we just add a private in front of it, it's going to be a little bit less annoying for us. Less error prone. Okay. So with this instance, we can now go in our lobby scene, which make sure it is actually on the object, so lobby scene object right here. And we're going to start coding our buttons function. Our button function have to be public. We can do something like onClick create account. Doesn't need any parameter. And then public void onClick login request. Also doesn't need any parameters. Why? Because we are going to get them from here. So when we create an account, we're going to need our three strings, and our three strings are stored in TMP input fields. So what I'll be doing right here is I'll declare a string for username, and it's going to be equal to GameObject.find. The name of our GameObject, I remember, is create username, just like this. That's the same name that matches our input field. So you guys remember, it's this one right here. This one has the TMP input field on it. And then we'll have to do a get component. And it's going to be type of TMP input field written this way. I don't have access to that simply because it's not in the namespace. So make sure you do using TMP Pro, this thing at the top here. And then it's going to appear. Where is my username stored? It's stored in .text value, just like this. Duplicate that twice, and we're going to be looking at password and email. I don't know why I'm hitting the caps button so often. Right, if you're worried about the email being in plain text, just know that we're going to encrypt it before we send it over. It's just not something we'll be doing today, or in this episode, sorry. Okay, so we got our tree information. Now it's time to actually call client instance send create account request, or just send create account, username, password, email. And just like this, we have isolated our lobby scene code, or actually our button code in the lobby. We've isolated that in the lobby scene, but we're still calling the thing in client. We're gonna do the exact same thing down here. What's the name of our buttons here? I've totally forgot. So under the login account, oh, we haven't changed those. Okay, so good thing that I caught that. This is gonna be login, username, email, and this is gonna be login, password. And we're going to make sure we change that here. So this is going to be password, and this is login, username, email. We only need 2 of these, so here and here. Send login request. And that's going to be the name of our first field. Okay. We're going to be expanding a little bit in this script in the future because we have to do some feedback to this scene as well. So we need to receive stuff such as changing the authentication message, changing the welcome message, blocking all the inputs while we're waiting for a response, and also unblocking those inputs when we do get a response. So we're not done with this script. However, at the moment, we are. Okay, now it's time to actually put our function on the submit buttons. So I will go ahead, click on my submit, and add a new onClick event, drop the lobby scene in here. This is for the create account, so lobby scene onClick create account. And I'm getting tired of speaking. I need some water again. Same thing for the submit, onClick login request. And I believe we got all we need at this point. So we're going to be sending those messages. However, the server is not going to be expecting all of them yet. He's not expecting the login request. So on our server right now, we have the login request to actually create full. I am currently on my onData inside server.cs. I will make sure this is login request, and I will create a new function for that. So login request. Connection ID still stays in. Channel ID still stays in. Receiving host ID still there. This is going to be, however, a login request message. And we'll have to create a new function for it. So private void login request, CNN ID, channel ID, receiving host ID, and net login request, so LR. Right now, since we ain't doing much with this, we are simply going to return the username and the password, well, username or email in this case. Here we go. I have forgot the most important part, so we're not sending the message just yet. We're just calling the function instead of client with the good parameters. So let's head over to client. In our send create account and send login, they're empty right now. That's where we get stuck. So let's go ahead and create those messages. It's always going to be a very simple function. We just have to define what is the message we'll be creating here, in this case the create account. And we just say, okay, what's the username we're putting in there? This is a username, so username. What's the password? It's going to be a hashed password eventually. Email is equal to email. And then we make sure to actually send this to the right person. So we're on the client. Since we're on the client, there's only one server. Just send that message over and we'll be good to go. Same thing down here. I'll just copy that over. Of course, change everything to a login request in this case. So LR. Copy login for these two. This is username or email. So username or email. Password stays the same, and then you send this message over. Okay. With this, we shall now be able to test. So let's go ahead, start the server, save the client, start the client, and expect miracles. I'm under the create account field. Username is going to be user, password is going to be pass, and email is going to be email. Okay, submit. And I'm getting it on the other end here. It's at the right spot. And then under the login, so I'll do email again and password, submit. And it's going through the other debug.log. I know because I'm looking at the stack. So this thing up here or down there, I'm looking at the stack, create account, and here, login request. I also know that's how it's being formatted. So, okay, we've done the biggest part. Now we have to create the response. Right, you guys down to do it in this episode? I believe so. We can crunch that down fairly quickly. So we're sending requests. Now we need to have some response from the server. This is so we can modify the client based on the response. So he's going to tell us, okay, you've been successful in creating the account, or yeah, that's going to be it. So you've been successful creating an account, or you've been successful logging in, which is going to take us to another scene. So we need to have the information somewhere. Well, let's go ahead and create those messages. Now, when I send a message and I expect a response, I want the response to have a specific way to be named. This is just how I like to do it. It comes with different variation, comes with different problems, but I'll show you first what I'm talking about. So I'm sending a net create account. Then I want the server to send me a on create account. And why am I not using the same message? I could actually use the same message two ways, because the client still, we still have nothing in here. So the client could have a case where he listens for a create account message. However, I don't like doing that for a simple reason that we're going to have too much stuff in our create account, too much useless stuff in our create account. What I'm talking about is that when we create an account, we send these three information, but once we receive, that's a bad example, let's do a login. So when I do a login, I only send these two information, but when I receive it, I'm going to need more than just that. I'm going to need to know what is my connection ID, what's my token I can use for asking the server stuff on my behalf, and it's just going to be more stuff. So if I put it in here, it's going to be sent in two ways, and I don't want to do that. I did it at one point, but I just realized that it doesn't cost anything to have additional .cs classes. So on create account is going to be the response I send back to my client. Every time I create one of these messages, I like to copy over from one that already exists, so I don't forget put the system.serializable, and I don't forget to change all of these right here. That being said, let's create our response down here. So public const on create account, and also public const on login request. He also needs to have a response. Okay, so what are these messages made out of? The onCreate account doesn't need any of that crap. We are going to take something else though. A public byte for success. This is so we know if it was successful or not, or even further than that, because it's a byte, we have 255 or 256 value we can put in there. We can use it as a enum of what's going on, or even a flag. And you can use this byte to store a lot of information in there actually. You can do a flag with this, so you can have, say, the byte at the index 0 would be nothing. So nothing went wrong, so I guess that would be successful. You can say that the byte at 1 says there was an error, don't go through with that. You can say that byte at 2 and then 4, they all have different things. So this would be missing username or missing password and so on. So you can do a flag with this and combine different error message and just receive that back. It's a little bit complicated for what we're going to be doing today. So instead I'll be sending a string called information. Not optimal, but definitely something that's going to be easy to work with, and this is going to allow us not to declare enumeration and have like byte error code just like Unity has. Not that it's a good practice, like I mentioned, we're trying to save bandwidth, so just one byte would have been quite enough. I just don't want to get into that right here in this tutorial. So if you're ready to do that, go ahead and turn the success byte into a flag enum and just know what the problem is, right? Okay. Having this completed, we are going to have a look at the on login request message, which is going to be a little bit different. So I'm going to create it first. Net on login request. as always, copy that, actually, copy this one over to onLogin request. Here as well. Okay, so what does this one take? Success byte information, as always, why not? We're going to take more information than that. The connection ID might be useful for us, so we know who we are regarding the server. We also want to have our username, and you'll see why in a second. And then we also want to have the discriminator. So if you're following a bit, discriminator username. This is the exact same setup as they use in Discord, in Battle.net. It looks like something like that. So my discriminator on Discord is this. Actually, it's 1. So here, that's my discriminator. That's my username. Or actually, I think there's a 3 here. Anywho, username on the left, #, discriminator on the right. So many people can have my username. This is not unique. Many people can have it if they want, but this is going to be unique. So it's something that has to be unique, and that's why we use it. Now, the reason I'm sending it in the login request is that, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to allow the player to log in using his email, but also his username and discriminator. Now, if he logs in with his email, I still want to show what his username is and also his discriminator, simply because that's what he gives to other people if he wants them to follow him. And that's what he enters in the add friend or add follow to follow somebody else. I don't want to show emails. That's just not smart. You don't want to show emails of people out there because they might get spam, or you just don't give out that information. That information is bad to give out for free, right? So you don't want to do that. Instead, just show something that you have in-house, which is going to be the username discriminator. Just imagine we're playing a game and then you see my email and then you Google it, you find out my MySpace from back in the days, and then you bully me with it. That would be a shame. You don't want to do that to your users. Okay, so we got our messages ready. Now it's time to head inside of my server.cs and actually send those. So under the create account, that's what happens when I get asked to get created an account. So we're not doing anything with the database just now. We are going to send something to that client, however, just tell him that it was successful. We're going to make up this message and let him know he was successful, just so we can start coding the client side of it. And then we'll come back, implement the database, do some verification, and so on. So what I like to do here is, why do I have a receiving host first? Well, it doesn't matter. Okay, so I'm going to send client receiving host connection ID, so I'm sending it to the right client, and then the message is going to be something I just make up right now. So let's go ahead and do a net underscore on create account OCA is equal to a new on create account. If it doesn't show up, it's because there's no synchronization done yet on your Symbolic link. So open up the client, the server, and then you'll see Unity starts loading, and you're gonna have that back in your editor. Okay, so OCA success equal to 0, OCA dot information account was created. Happy face. Send that message, and here we go. That message has been sent to the right user. We haven't tested it out yet, but I promise it has been sent to the right user. And we'll do that here as well. So net on login request OLR net on login request, and we're going to randomize most of what we just sent right here. So dot success equal to 0, OLR dot information, everything is good. In fact, I don't even have to send that information, but we're doing it anyway. So username, and then the discriminator, blah blah 000. Cool. Is there anything else? There should be a token in there. I forgot the token. Let's head back and add the token. Very important for our thing to work. So I'll go back here, public string token. Okay, here we are, and we're sending the OLR message. So everything is good on this end. Now we have to receive that message over to the client. So we're going to do that real quick, and that's going to end our episode as well. So let's head back to client.cs. We've done a lot today, so you should be proud. We've completed a bit of the the UI, and then we start sending some message back and forth. So I'm under client.cs in my on data. That's where I do my cases. And we're going to look at on create account. Make sure it's not create account. It really has to be on create account. And also on login requests. Okay. And we're going to start writing down those functions down here. So private void on create account. This one requires the only the net underscore on create account, I believe. So OCA. And we're going to copy that over for the on login request. On login requests, net on login requests. Okay. Now we just have to call these functions. So on create account, and we are going to make sure we cast that net message. So net on create account message. That's a lot of manual labor right here. So net on login requests. Okay, on a login request. Good. We have our things. We have our things. At this point, we are going to call the lobby scene, and we're going to change stuff around from there. So if we're able to create an account, we should change the authentication message and say account has been created and stuff like that. Basically, to access the lobby scene, I'll use the same technique as I've used for client. I'll just make a public instance at the top. So public static lobby scene instance. And since we have the power of mono behavior right here, we can go in start and say instance is equal to this. Therefore, we're going to set the instance. Now, I don't have anything to change my message right here, so we'll lay down some very, very simple function. Public, of course, so we can call them from somewhere else. Change welcome message to string message. And also, just below that, we'll do change authentication message. But before, let's go grab our welcome message. So where is it exactly? Here, welcome message text, just like this. So I'll copy that over so I don't make any mistake. GameObject.find this get component. This component is type of TMP Pro. No, actually, is it? It's text mesh pro UGY dot text. It's going to be equal to message, just like this. And that's my one-liner that is going to work. We'll do the same thing for the authentication message, and of course we have to change the name of our field. Oops, for the right one. So this is what I need. Okay, there it is. Again, I haven't tested out, but it should work just fine. And we'll get to the testing phase in a second, guys. There's also one more thing I wanted to do in the lobby scene before we close it off. I want to do the blocking of the inputs. We've mentioned it earlier. It's time to actually do it. Now, the way I like to block the inputs like this is to use a canvas group. And it's going to be a simple component that we can just toggle on and off, and you'll see it works like wonder. So if I go under my canvas over here, I'll just put it on the whole canvas. I add a canvas group. Just know that this item can be put on lower level of the canvas as well if you're only trying to block, say, the create account panel or stuff like that. In my case, I want to block everything. If I'm creating an account, I don't want the person to try and log in at the same time. So here, what the component is, it's a canvas group. Lets you play around with the alpha of the whole thing. Lets you play with interactable. And lets you know if you want to block raycast or not. So here it is. This is what we're going to do. Toggle this on and off. It's going to be very, very simple. But we'll put it right here. So public void enable inputs. And public void disable, not undisable, disable inputs. Now I could do GameObject.find canvas. Really, just do it the way you want. You know the different method you can actually use. Find canvas, get component type of canvas group. Interactable could be equal to, this is enables, this is true. But you know, you can go around and if you want, you can do a find object of type canvas group interactable is equal to false. You can have a reference to it as a serialized field at the top. You do you. I won't guide you in this. Obviously, if you want to have the most optimized version of it, you have a field at the top, either a public one or a serialized field, canvas group, CG, and then you just use that CG to go on and off. To be honest, just do what you feel like doing. Okay, so we have now the enable inputs and disable input, which respectively just do this, on and off. Yeah, this. So what we'll be doing right here is that we'll place them at a convenient area. So when we click on create account, I'd like to disable the input. We're sending a message to the server. Let's go ahead and disable the inputs right off the get-go. Same thing for the on-click login request. We're sending a message. We should now be expecting a response. Therefore, let's not allow the user to do anything else. Now to re-enable those inputs, we'll do it from outside. We have an instance and we can just call enable inputs once more. So I believe we're pretty much done in this one. Let's head back to client. So in our onCreate account, this is where we decide what we're going to do basically. We have a couple of information in there, then we can just play around with the authentication message, we can play around with the input state. In fact, as soon as we receive a message, we should re-enable the input in this case. So I'll go and do lobby scene instance, enable input. If I'm receiving a onCreate account, I am going to re-enable the input. Whether it was successful or not, I'm re-enabling the input. Maybe in the login request, I want to do something different. If the login was successful, I'm not going to allow him to enable inputs, but I also plan on changing scene at that point. So it's really up to you. So I'll check here if OLR success, if it's not equal to 1, so if it was not successful, then enable input, else successful login. And I'll just write that here. So successful login, unable to login. Okay, but in the create account, no matter what happens, we're re-enabling the inputs. And at this point we can do, okay, so were you successful or not? We don't know, but we have information in that OCA. So remember, we have information right here. We can use that to show the user. So we can do something like lobby scene instance, change authentication message to OCA.information. This will let him know whether it was successful or not, and then we could do additional stuff based on the success byte. But right now, don't have anything in mind. I just want to change the message of it. Okay, let's actually do the exact same thing down here. So we're going to change the message here. So change authentication message of the lobby scene. So lobby scene instance, change a message for OLR information, so we know what goes on. And that's all we need to do for today, I believe. We'll test it out, see if we have any fix. Possible, we've been coding for a while, we might have a problem somewhere. I'm hoping that we don't, but just in case. Oh, and also, I'll create a folder for my scenes real quick, so we can keep this clean. And here we go. Okay, I'm going to start the server, put that in full screen, so we're going to have the full experience of our nice feedback. Let's see. Let's create an account, guys. Let's create the username, password, something at .ca, whatever. Press and submit. Account was created. Of course, it wasn't really created, but we received the message back. And if you saw, for a slight second, everything flashed. And that's because the input went offline when I pressed on the button. But since we're on localhost, everything happens so fast that we basically don't see the frame where inputs are actually disabled. Now for email or username, whatever you want. And then at this point, since we faked our response on the server to say that it's always successful, we should not have our inputs back. So let me click on submit. It says everything is good. Okay, so well, we received the feedback, so everything is good. Let's see why I did that. So I'm at client.cs. If success is not equal to 1. Oh, right, so I put success on 0 on the last thing. So if it's not equal to 0, then enable input would have not been called, and therefore we would be blocked over here. But you're just gonna have to trust me on that. Or we can just test it out. It's gonna take a second. Yeah, so here it is. Everything is good. Inputs are blocked at this point. We're going to teleport the user in another scene or something. Okay. Quite a lot of things done today. I'm quite happy about that. So again, little tap in the back. We did message back and forth this time. We actually had message sent from the server to the client, and the client actually had a response. And we have a total of 4 messages, guys. Next up, we're going to start looking at the database. I hope you guys are eager for that. And at this point, I believe you've done the hardest part of the tutorial, and the rest is going to be information in database that might be a little bit complicated. But if you don't plan on using MongoDB, maybe you can skip on to the second part right now if you feel really, really comfortable. But I wouldn't. I wouldn't, because you still need to practice a lot. And I need some view time. That's the truth. Okay. Hey, speaking of what I need, if you can leave a like on the video, that'd be quite good. Subscribe. Join us on Discord. I think the best way to help out is to join us on Discord and actually be active on there. And yeah, speak with the people. Make friends. That being said, guys, I will be seeing you in the next episode, in which we'll tackle MongoDB on C#. Cheers.